Welcome to the Stochastic MLB Strategy Show. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. I'm here with Adam Shit My Money Share. Shit, 1 second, guys. I got to close off my YouTube, apparently. Having some technical difficulties here today. Okay, Adam, now we are ready to go. We already did about 5 minutes of the show, not realizing that it had not gone live as it said it had. Can you guys hear me now? This is, sorry for the delay here. We're going to jump right into this. Apologies once again, guys. We're going to go quickly through the early slate to start. Then we'll get into the, we'll go probably quickly through the evening slate, but we want to jump right into these games. Again, this is the Stochastic MLB Strategy Show, also functionally the live before lock for this early slate, because we do have two slates starting soon. We've got the FanDuel slate starting in about 20 minutes, and we have the DraftKings slate, of course, starting in an hour. So we will jump right into this slate. Adam, we'll start just going game by game, starting with the Twins and White Sox. First of all, can you tell me about your level of interest in the pitchers in this game? We've got Sonny Gray on the mound for the Twins, Lucas Giolito for the White Sox. How much interest do you have in either of these pitchers?
So that's a much smoother start than the first time we tried this. So that's good.
That is.
I think both pitchers are pretty interesting. Giolito certainly took a step back last year compared to what we were used to getting from him in previous seasons, but he was still a good pitcher. Minnesota's lineup isn't the most dangerous here. The top and the middle of it are fine, but it does drop off a bit towards the bottom. Sonny Gray, just a very good real life pitcher, gets a good amount of strikeouts, also typically does a good job keeping the ball on the ground. 24.4% strikeout percentage for him last year, 25% for Giolito. So certainly some interest in both of the pitchers, trying to get the most recent top pitchers tool pulled up now. But both of the price tags are fine. On DraftKings, $8,300 for Gray, $8K for Giolito. On FanDuel, Giolito, $7,300. Gray is a bit more expensive, but I would go to Gray first, but both of these guys certainly give you plenty of upside. We have right now Sonny Gray pulling 31% ownership, 22% chance of being a top two pitcher. Giolito coming in just behind him, 23% ownership, 17% chance of being top two. So both of those guys look pretty solid.
And then on the other side of it, the bats, just whichever stack you want to start with, but tell me about your level of interest in stacking these teams or playing one-offs from the Twins or White Sox.
Yeah, so I don't love either team because I think both pitchers are good. I would likely go to Minnesota first. They are getting more ownership on DraftKings, pulling about 6%, but they're also one of the highest top value percentages at 13.5%. So that does just make them look a little bit better. You can get to them and still build a really good lineup around them. And then, like I was saying, Giolito did have some home run issues last year. You do have some guys on Minnesota that have power, not as many as in previous years, but Byron Buxton, obviously always a good play. Nick Gordon pretty much came out of nowhere last year as far as his ability to hit the ball hard, barrel it up, and actually drive it. He's hitting cleanup here. He's also relatively inexpensive. Miranda has some power. Jeffers is a pretty good hitting catcher. So there is stuff to like from Minnesota. They do also have a 4.5 or 4.6 implied run total, which just kind of stands out because that's relatively high going up against Giolito.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you prepared at all to talk about the first game on the FanDuel side? Are we playing on FanDuel today? Because we do have an earlier game that I did skip over, Houston and Pittsburgh. Are you ready to talk about that one at all?
Yeah,
I
sure.
skipped over it. Yeah, so we've got Jose Urquidy and Rich Hill on the mound for that one. Do you think you would play either of these on the FanDuel slate?
Probably not. One pitcher, neither one is all that exciting. Urquidy would be the one that I look to if I go to one. He is 8,100. He's got a good matchup with Pittsburgh. He's still not a great strikeout pitcher, though, and you do have plenty of other good pitching on this slate.
Yep, absolutely. And then stacks from that game. Any interest in stacking up the Astros or Pirates?
Yeah, Houston for sure. I mean, Rich Hill is like 43 years old. He was drafted when I was 9. As a general rule of thumb, I will stack against any pitcher that was playing pro baseball when I was in elementary school. Like he's obviously Hill's, crafty. He's got breaking stuff. He changes speeds. He still knows how to pitch, but it's certainly not the type of pitcher that I'm shying away from with these Astros bats.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and Trey asking, worried about the wind at all in that Twins game? I think for the most part, we've got like great weather for bats across the board here today. So so it's going to be a lot of nice weather spots for bats. All right, that'll do it for the early FanDuel game that's not on the DraftKings slate. We'll jump right back into the DraftKings slate here. And the second game we will jump into is San Diego at the New York Mets. We've got Blake Snell on the mound for the Padres, Tyler McGill for the Mets. Start with the pitchers. What's your level of interest in these guys?
Two relatively high upside arms. Snell, great strikeout stuff. Not the best matchup against the Mets. It is the kind of matchup that scares me with Snell too, just because it's a offense that's relatively difficult to strike out. It's an offense that's probably going to drive up his pitch counts. And we know that Blake Snell is typically pretty inefficient because he does walk too many guys, nearly a 10% walk percentage last year, but he also strikes out 31.6% of hitters. So it takes a lot of pitches to walk guys. It takes a lot of pitches to strike guys out. So that's why you typically don't see him go that deep into games. But his price tag reflects his relative inability to work deep in the games. So he is a pretty high upside option. This is another game that does appear to have good hitting weather. Looks like the wind's blowing out here. You have a relatively high total for a game that has Blake Snell facing Tyler McGill. So that's risky, but the strikeout upside is certainly still there.
So with that weather being hitter friendly, does that give you any interest in taking, some shots on these stacks against relatively good pitchers?
Yeah, especially because they're not very popular. The Mets are only pulling 2% aggregate ownership right now, 3.5% chance of being the top stack. They are relatively expensive, but Snell can work himself into trouble pretty quickly, and yeah, he can get himself out of it with strikeouts, but it doesn't take a lot to get to him and potentially be in situations where you're hitting with a lot of guys on base. So from a full stack standpoint, I like the Mets. I don't really like going to them individually just because Snell is somebody where he's still a really good, really talented pitcher. And my thought process there is sort of he's either if he's on, none of these guys are in a good matchup. And if he's off, you just want as many of them as you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. So interest in just stacking what about the other side of the game?
Kind of the same thing on the other side. McGill is a solid enough pitcher, but you still have favorable hitting weather. Going back to the start of last season for McGill, 183 expected ISO to righties, 185 to lefties. So this is somebody I think you can target with power. And of course, the Padres have plenty of it. So it's easier, I think, to find guys on the Padres that you actually really want to get to, whether that's Machado, Soto, Bogarts, Cronenworth, Grisham at the top of the order individually than the Mets. But both of these stacks look pretty appealing.
Yeah, okay, and then the final game that we have starting right at lock. We're going through these quickly, guys, because we know that you wanted to make some lineups. Clark Schmidt on the mound for the Yankees, Peyton Battenfield for the Guardians. What's your level of interest in Clark Schmidt or Peyton Battenfield?
Not particularly high. I just don't really think this is a game that you need to get to either one. Battenfield's making his major league debut, made one start at AAA this year, 28 last year. In his 28 starts last year, only struck out 17% of hitters. Doesn't strike me as somebody that you really need to be getting to ever, but especially on this slate. For Schmidt, not really looking to go there either. Relatively difficult strikeout matchup, and just a slate where you do have pretty solid pitching elsewhere that I think you can get to first.
Okay, and then I'm guessing you're going to have more interest in the bats here. What's your level of interest in the Yankees or the Guardians? You can be stacking them up, playing any one-offs. Tell me about your interest.
I really like the Yankees here because you're getting Coors Field and Wrigley Field pulling so much ownership away from them. They actually have about a 13% chance of being the top value stack, but only 6% ownership, 6.5% chance of being the top stack. It's really unusual to get the Yankees in a good spot at modest ownership, but it's because you have the wind blowing out in Wrigley. You have the Coors Field game where Jose Urena is pitching on one of those teams. So you're going to get a bunch of ownership going there, and it kind of is just pushing the Yankees down the board and making them a really appealing stack to get to. And you have an offense this good facing a pitcher making his major league debut that didn't have great numbers, at least in terms of strikeouts at AAA. I really like the idea of the Yankees in tournaments.
Yeah, me too. At low ownership, getting the Yankees at low ownership, that's kind of surprised me. You don't often see Yankees with better top value odds than top stack overall odds, but we're seeing it on this slate. So yeah, hard not to have interest there. All right, so we breezed through those first three games after the late start. So glad we could make up some time there. Guys, this show is sponsored by Bet365, which has an incredible offer for people only in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and Virginia. Unfortunately, the rest of us don't get this great deal. This is a killer deal here. The four people, again, in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, and Virginia. Go to Bet365. All you have to do is deposit $1, make a $1 bet, and you're going to get $200 in bonus bets at Bet365. So really, you're only putting $1 at risk. The upside is unlimited. I don't really know what else I can say to sell this deal. If you live in New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, or Virginia, you haven't yet signed up for Bet365, this is as good a deal as you're going to find anywhere. So highly recommend. Use the link in the description when you sign up to take advantage of that deal. Again, it's just bet $1 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets at Bet365. Reminder, the legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Adam, let's move on to the next game on the slate, which is the Mariners and Cubs. So this is a win spot for sure. We've got Logan Gilbert on the mound for the Mariners, Marcus Stroman for the Cubs. Are you factoring in the wind here in deciding whether you have interest in these pitchers? Do you think you're going to play either of these pitchers?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to, just because both of these pitchers are pretty solid. But the win certainly plays a factor here. So in tournaments, but they're both pulling 2% ownership. If you want to just bet on the talent of Logan Gilbert or Marcus Stroman at very, very low ownership, that's fine. But it's certainly not a spot where I'm actively going out of my way to try and target pitchers. You have the wind blowing out at like 25 miles an hour. It's 80 degrees, 5.6 implied run total for Seattle, 5.4 for Chicago. This is just a spot where, if the wind were neutral or blowing in, you would have an 8.5, 9 run total. Here it's at 11 instead. So outside of just throwing caution to the wind in tournaments maybe and saying like, well, I'll just hope that Stroman keeps the ball on the ground or, Gilbert gets strikeouts or whatever. I don't see a reason to feel good about going to either pitcher.
Throwing caution to the wind. Are you doing an EMAC impression now?
Oh man, I regret saying that.
That was great. That was a great pun. Well done. All right. So, I mean, it's still pretty solid pitchers here in this win spot. Are you interested in stacking against Logan Gilbert or Marcus Stroman?
Yeah, the weather just makes it very appealing. In terms of top stack percentage, you have the Cubs coming in 5th highest at about 6.5%, basically tied with the Yankees, getting a little bit more ownership than the Yankees though, and are offering a little bit less value. So I like the Cubs, but that's sort of why I think that the Yankees are so interesting is we have them with a very similar chance of being the top scoring stack. They're offering more value and they're getting less ownership. Same goes for Seattle. We have them with a much higher top stack score at 10%. They're second highest on the slate behind St. Louis, but not offering as much value. And they are getting the second most ownership behind St. Louis as well. So I think the Cubs and the Mariners look good. I am just a little bit hesitant to go there when you can get lower owned, like Yankees, for example, or even in the case of Seattle, the Rockies are lower owned than the Mariners are in cores as well.
Yeah, absolutely. T-Bird asking Adam, so on FanDuel, are you just playing Sonny Gray or
I'm working on I'm only playing cash, but it's looking
Okay.
like Blake Snell, which scares the shit out of me, to be honest.
That is very scary. Okay.
At least you don't lose points for walks on FanDuel.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You also need him to go 6 innings though, which is never a guarantee.
Yeah, true. Any individual bats that you want to target in even though you're maybe less inclined to full stack this game, are you interested in playing one-offs or secondary stacks from Seattle or the Cubs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in stacking, playing one-offs, whatever. It's just a matter of finding a way to balance out that ownership in your lineup. But, Julio Rodriguez is pretty much always going to be a good play. Cal Raleigh is always going to be a good catcher option when he's sitting in the middle of the order. Hernandez, Kelnick, Suarez, France. Like, this is a lot of power on the Mariners that can do damage against a pitcher in Stroman that typically doesn't miss a lot of bats. On the other side, you have, some power, some speed at the top with Horner and Madrigal. Ian Happ and Bellinger have power. Mancini's got some power. So there is plenty to like from this game.
Okay. And then, of course, we have another Coors game. Yet again, we've got the Cardinals looking like the best stack on the slate. Jack Flaherty on the mound, though, for St. Louis. Jose Urena for the Rockies. First of all, do you have any interest in either of these pitchers?
Dear God, no.
Yeah. Looking at the implied totals here, and 7 implied total here for the Cardinals, nearly 6 for the Rockies. I'm reading this in Fantasy Cruncher, so I don't know. I think it's like an average of the totals for other places, so that I don't know exactly what the numbers are here, but very, very high implied team totals for both the Cardinals and the Rockies. Tell me about your level of interest in stacking these teams or playing one-offs.
It's really, really similar to what we've seen on recent slates. The Cardinals are, I think, hands down the best stack in terms of likelihood of success. They are facing a pitcher in Urena who I have no idea how this dude is in the major leagues. You've got a good lineup from St. Louis. They're in cores. They're not expensive. Like, it's just they're clearly the top stack. We have them with a 28.5% chance of being the top stack, 14% chance of being the top value stack, which is second to Milwaukee, but also 28% ownership. And you just run into an issue where it becomes very difficult to differentiate the rest of your lineup. Like when you compare this to basketball, not only is there more variance and you're just going to be able to get away from chalk easier anyway, but like basketball, you'll talk about, a player being really popular and say, oh, well, we'll just differentiate elsewhere. And you're talking about 1 or 2 spots that you're needing to get different. With baseball, you're talking about this full stack where you're talking about half of your lineup being popular, and it just makes it so much more difficult to be contrarian. So the way I approached or would have approached if I'd played tournaments yesterday, I built lineups, and basically the Cardinals were going to be my highest owned team, but I'll still like half the field on almost every player. And I probably expect it to be similar here just because of the massive amount of ownership coming in. You're going to be happy getting to whatever of those guys you can. It just becomes difficult to knock enough ownership off to still want to play those in large field tournaments.
Yep, makes sense. All right, anything else you want to say about this Rockies game?
The Rocky side, I mean, Flaherty's clearly a better pitcher than Jose Urena. He has a bit of just an unknown factor about him right now. He was looking like a very good pitcher early on in his career, dealt with some injuries, hasn't been the same so far since, and you are getting the Rockies at lower ownership still in cores. So I do think that they're a tournament stack, even though clearly Flaherty on his worst day is better than Jose Urena.
Yeah, we have the Rockies with an 8.5% chance to be in the top stack, just slightly over-owned at 9.3% projected ownership. So yeah, it looks like a stack that you can play with some confidence. Not going to be extremely popular. All right, moving on, we do have the Diamondbacks at the Brewers. Dre Jameson on the mound for the D-backs. Jansen Junk for the Brewers. How much interest do you have in these pitchers?
Not much in either of them.
Jansen Junk 9,100. That is quite a price tag there.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so nothing else we really need to say about the pitchers. How about the bats? Any interest in the D-backs or the Brewers as stacks, as one-offs? What's your interest here?
Yeah, I mean, some interest in them just because Milwaukee's really cheap. I mentioned a second ago, we have them as the highest top value percentage, but they're still only getting about 4% ownership. Dre Jameson, if I remember correctly, did post some solid numbers at AAA last year. I remember rostering him when he first came up. He pitched he had 22 games, 21 starts, 114 innings at AAA last year. Struck out 21% of hitters. 5.6 xFIP. So I don't know what I'm remembering or why I rostered him, but he actually struggled at AAA. So take it with a grain of salt. It is the PCL or whatever they call it now. But
okay.
Milwaukee does just have cheap power upside. On the other side, a bit of an unknown in Junk as well. Arizona has enough power in their lineup also. We don't have the lineup yet, but assuming you're going to have Rojas, Marte, Walker, Corbin Carroll, there's plenty of upside on both sides here.
Okay, and then any favorite one-offs from this game?
Kettle Marte, Corbin Carroll, Jesse Winker, Tellez if he's in.
All right. Next game up, we'll move on. Phillies versus Marlins. We've got Zach Wheeler on the mound for the Phillies, Edward Cabrera for the Marlins. How much interest do you have in these pitchers?
Wheeler looks really good. One of the best pitching options on the slate. He has a 30% chance of being top two pitcher, 41.5% ownership. Certainly happy to get there. On the other side for Cabrera going up against Philadelphia, he is a talented young pitcher. He's not getting much ownership, but not really a spot that I'm looking to get to.
Yeah, what's the weather in Philadelphia? I haven't looked at that. Pull that up. I'm curious how is this another one of the better? Yeah, it is one of the better weather spots here. It looks like in Philadelphia as well. Another factor. Okay, so Zach Wheeler looks great. Cabrera looks maybe playable. How about the bats on the other side? Any interest in stacking up the Marlins against Zach Wheeler?
No.
Okay, how about the Phillies?
A little bit more in the Phillies. Like you have good hitters in that lineup. It's a little bit watered down right now because of injuries, obviously, but they would be the side that I prefer getting to. Again, Cabrera is very talented. It's not like it's a walk in the park, but there is just a lot of upside against a pitcher that is still a bit of an unknown.
The FanDuel. So I was thinking we were going to get through the FanDuel slate before the lock, which is in 3 minutes. I guess we already got through it. We already got through those 6 games. I was thinking that we had a couple more to get through. So, all right, we've made it through the entire FanDuel slate. We've talked about every game on that slate, so we can relax a little bit. I was trying to get it done before 11:35, make sure we get through it all, but we've made it for the FanDuel slate. So now we just have to get through the rest of the slate, which just one more game on the early slate, and then we can go maybe an overview of the early slate, and then we will jump into the late slate as well. Last game on the early slate is Washington at LAA at the Angels. Mackenzie Gore on the mound for the Nationals, Griffin Canning for the Angels. how much interest you have in either of these pitchers?
Not much for either. There's just better pitching on the slate. I think right now we have Mackenzie Gore with a 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. We have Griffin Canning at 10%. Canning is pulling 18% ownership, so going a little bit over owned, but 7,400 is at least a decent value against a weak Washington offense. They don't strike out a ton, but just not a lot of good hitters there. For Mackenzie Gore, this is a highly regarded pitching prospect. He was one of the key pieces of the Juan Soto trade coming over from San Diego. Only projected for 8% ownership, 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher at 6,700. The Angels clearly have a lot of very good right-handed hitters in their lineup, so it's a scary spot. But if you wanted to go this route, as an SP2 and just hope that the talent wins out, I think that's fine at low ownership. But it would be more so like using somebody like this maybe to offset some of the Coors ownership or Wrigley ownership, as opposed to like actually seeking him out.
Okay. And then bats on the other side of it. How much interest do you have in either of the teams as stacks, as one-offs? What's your level of interest?
I like the idea of the Angels as a stack just because they do have so much right-handed power and they're only pulling 2% ownership, 4% chance of being the top stack. Again, Gore is a talented pitcher, but we don't have an Angels lineup yet. But assuming you're going to have Ward, Trout, Rendon, Renfroe, Drury all hitting from the right side, and then maybe Ohtani in there as well. Not sure if he'll get the day off today or not, but it's just a very, very high upside offense that isn't getting any ownership in a park that is actually pretty solid to hit in these days.
All right, so we've made it through this slate. Let's do a little overview though. So first of all, you're playing a single entry lineup. Who's your main stack in a single entry here?
Probably the Yankees.
Yeah, that makes sense. The Yankees look really good. Every other team that looks really good is going to be super high owned. So I like that. I think that's probably where I would go as well. It's been pointed out to me that typically when I'm asked this question, and I didn't do this intentionally, but it's like you start with the top stack odds, and then whichever team, the first one that has positive leverage at the top of the top stack odds is usually the team that I go to in single entry. And I think that works here. I think the Yankees just look really good. So I like that call. What about pitchers? If you're playing single entry, are you going to Zach Wheeler on DraftKings? Who else do you think you're going to?
Probably go Wheeler and then whatever fits out of like Gray, Giolito, Snell.
Okay. Are you more inclined if you're playing single entry? Do you think you're more inclined to just do a primary stack and then one-offs, or are you likely to put a secondary stack in there as well?
I don't really have a strong preference on that one. I usually just create my lineups the same way and then whatever I end up with.
Okay, mix and match. And then home run pick. Should we do a home run pick from the early slate?
Sure. So Cal Raleigh doubled for me yesterday. I didn't quite get there. All right, so I'll go off the board. I'll go Nick Gordon.
Nick Gordon. Okay. Yeah, it's hard for me playing this game because I'm like, where do I draw the line at like who is like too obvious?
Right. Yeah. I'll take Aaron Judge.
Right. Aaron Judge, Paul Goldschmidt in Colorado. That's what I did yesterday. Somebody asked me during NBA Live before lock, so I put it in chat. But I think that's probably cheating. Is Nolan Gorman cheating, do you think?
No, Nolan Gorman's far enough down the order. That's fine.
Yeah, and he's in Colorado. I'll take Nolan Gorman as my dong pick here. All right.
Well, I got him in my 3-man lineup on FanDuel. So
nice. So we can both cheer for Nolan Gorman here. Anybody else have any other questions? Anything you want to go over for this early slate before we jump in and talk about the later slate a little bit? I'll wait around for questions. But I guess while we are waiting around for questions, I should tell you that we do have another great offer, 50% off everything at Stokastic, any sport, platinum, weekly or monthly. I mean, you get your choice of what you want to sign up for, but you can get 50% off any of our products using promo code SCORE or the link in the description. You can get access to ownership, lineup generator, lineup builder, boom bust, leverage scores, our industry leading projections. This is of course for first time users only, but if you use promo code SCORE, you can get 50% off whichever package you choose. Different sports, you can choose platinum, weekly, monthly, whatever you want. So just use promo code SCORE to get access to that. And of course, all the tools that Adam and I are referencing throughout the show, the top stacks tool, the top pitchers tool. We also have a top batters tool, which we don't talk about all that much, but it is useful when you are setting your lineups, especially if you are hand building. The top batters tool can be a pretty cool thing to use as well. So make sure you sign up using promo code SCORE for new users. All right, let me see if we have any questions related to this early slate. All right. Nick Kapluski asks for DraftKings, Giolito or Snell. Who's your preference, Adam?
I think they're very similar. I'll go Snell just for the strikeout stuff, but I think it's really close.
Yeah, that is a good question. Very good question there, Nick.
And for what it's worth, that was like my decision point on FanDuel as well. And I went Snell, but I didn't feel great about it. He was just a little bit cheaper there.
Yeah, on FanDuel, I feel like the pricing is a little bit more different, right? We've got Giolito at 73. Oh, I guess they are very
actually,
close.
Yes, so Snell was a little bit more expensive, but still ended up going there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I think that is all the questions we had for the early slate. Baldy in the Oaf did say that he almost took down the turbo yesterday thanks to the Orioles. Did you play on the turbo, Adam?
No, I didn't. I forgot to. But yeah, the Orioles, Ryan Mountcastle in particular, but the Orioles came through.
I also did not play that slate. I heard about it a little bit. I'm sure you would have played the Orioles. So
yeah, I
always
play the Orioles.
Yeah,
9 RBI for Ryan Mountcastle.
9 RBI, man, that's a game.
Yeah, three-run homer and a grand slam.
Wow. Okay, that'll do it. Good for Ryan Mountcastle. Are you prepared to talk about the evening slate? It starts at 6:35 Eastern tonight. We've got another 6-game slate. Looks like another relatively big slate. You want to go over that one for a little bit?
Sure.
All right. Well, then let's jump into that one. Give me 1 second here. And we will start with your Orioles going up against the A's. Dean Kramer on the mound for the Orioles. Ken Waldichuk for the A's. What's your level of interest in these pitchers?
Not very high. Both pitchers I think are decent. Like Ken Waldichuk was a key piece of, I believe, the Domingo Román deal from the Yankees. He's got some talent, solid enough young left-hander, but not somebody I'm looking to really get to here against Baltimore. Typically, you can make a little bit of a case for looking to lefties against the Orioles because it helps to mitigate Cedric Mullins. It helps to mitigate Gunnar Henderson. Adley Rutschman last year was not very good from the right side. He has been better so far this year, and apparently I just heard a quote on a game the other day. He said last year was like the first year he's ever struggled to hit right-handed. So maybe he's not actually a bad right-handed hitter, and it was just like everybody's assumption based on what we had seen so far in the pros. But typically you can make an easier case for getting lefties against the Orioles, but this still isn't one that I want to get to. Dean Kramer, you could make a little bit stronger case for since the Athletics are really, really bad. And Kramer's coming in at $5,500 as well. I also think the Orioles would probably like him to give them some innings because Grayson Rodriguez only went like 4 1/3 yesterday. The bullpen's gotten taxed a little bit. You probably aren't going to need to really pay down to Dean Kramer all that much. He's pulling 9% ownership right now. If you have to get down there, I think it's fine. But with how soft pricing's been in general, I assume you're going to be able to get all of the Strider, Gausman, Kershaw that you want.
Was that game the one that you were thinking about going to yesterday? Was it yesterday?
Yep.
The Orioles game?
Yeah. I would have gone yesterday if the show had ended at 6 instead of 6:30.
You're not willing to go if you're going to be late?
It was just I still hadn't made baseball lineups yet either.
Okay.
And I would have ended up rushing. And the only reason I was going to go was to see Rodriguez pitch. And it was all right, well, if I'm going to get there in like the 3rd or the 4th inning, like he might not even be in the game at that point.
Yeah, I suppose. Makes sense. All right. Stacks from this game. Obviously, the Orioles look a lot better than the A's here. Do you have any interest in tell me about your level of interest in these stacks or bats from this game?
Definitely interested in the Orioles. They are projected for quite a bit of ownership. We have them with the top or at the highest ownership percentage on DraftKings. So that certainly, will limit your interest a little bit, but I think it's also deserved, like just a very, very high upside offense. As far as Oakland goes, they're getting 10% ownership as well because they're such a good value. They're pretty much free across the board. 21% chance of being the top value stack. On DraftKings, they have one hitter in their lineup north of 4K. That's Ramon Laureano. Tony Kemp, Aledmus Diaz, and Shea Langoliers are north of 3K, and everybody else is cheaper than that. So really, really, really cheap offense. But I think you're just going to see a lot of overlap within A stacks. It's not that 10% ownership is a crazy amount and that you have to like steer clear of it. But the problem I think is going to be that like all of the A stacks look the same, where it's 5-man A stack, some combination of the top 2 pitchers, and then whoever you like the best one-offs are. So that's kind of the problem there, in addition to the fact that they suck.
Okay, yeah, hard to get there. Would you be more inclined to play the A's as one-offs and short stacks?
Probably, just because for one, it's hard to find 5 guys on this team you actually want to play. It's hard to find 3 also, but putting something together like Langoliers, Laureano, Jace Peterson, something like that can work.
Bill Miner says, I was a little behind on the stream, but I heard the 9 RBI. I don't know who changed RBIs to RBI, but it's just wrong. But it's runs batted in. So the S is on the R.
It's RBI. It's not RBIs. Has never made sense.
Yeah, I think I'm with Adam on this one. I think it's 9 RBI. I hear you though. I hear what you're saying. Sometimes it's a little bit throws me off a little bit using the singular for a plural, but in this case it makes sense because it's runs batted in. I was trying to think of another example. I think ATM. I forget what the deal is with ATM. There are different little weird things like that. Thank you, Arnold Lane.
ATM machine, but the M stands for machine.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a weird thing there. Arnold Lane says, great pronunciation there, Neil, on Kapluski. Most would have butchered that. I may have butchered it. Do we have any idea how it's actually pronounced? Maybe Mr. Kapluski can come back. Somebody in chat named Kapluski can come back and tell me that I was completely wrong, because I very much might have been. And then I had what else was I going to respond to? There's somebody else in chat that I wanted to respond to here. Oh yeah. Blake Wireman asked top pitchers for the early slate. So I think Zach Wheeler pretty clearly a top pitcher. Who do you want to throw in there as some of your? I know now that we've transitioned to the late slate and they're off your mind. Yeah. Zach Wheeler, Lucas Giolito, Sonny Gray, Blake Snell. Any other pitchers that you can recall from the early slate that look really good?
So I think Wheeler's the clear one, and then the 2 is sort of whatever fits, whatever you land on, whatever you prefer out of Gray, Giolito, Snell. They are all very, very similar.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I mean, just reading down I'll tell you who looks the best in the top pitchers wheel. So we have Zach Wheeler with a 30% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, Sonny Gray number 2 with a 22% chance, then down to Giolito 17, Blake Snell 17, and then it's kind of flat actually with Tyler McGill, Mackenzie Gore, Logan Gilbert, Marcus Stroman, all Edward Cabrera, even Dre Jameson, Griffin Canyon, all in double-digit odds of being a top 2 pitcher. But yeah, clearly Zach Wheeler number 1, and then from there I'd say it's Gray, Giolito, Snell, and then from there it's a little bit dicier.
I think I would say. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think I would say Gray is my second favorite, but if you told me that you wanted to play Blake Snell instead, there would be no pushback at all. Same goes for Giolito.
Yep, absolutely. And then Tyler McGill actually has a little bit of positive leverage here. 12% projected ownership, 14% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Maybe some interest there, but facing the Pods is kind of tough. All right, well let's transition back to the night slate once again. Anything else you want to say about the Baltimore-Oakland game?
Go O's.
Go O's. Chris Sale and Taj Bradley facing each other for the Red Sox versus Rays. Any interest in Chris Sale or Taj Bradley here? What's your level of interest in these pitchers?
So trying to quickly figure out who Taj Bradley is, but Chris Sale has struggled a bit out of the gate. I think velocity's been fine. He kind of just was missing his spots against the Tigers. He was still getting strikeouts, so he got lit up by the Orioles in his first start. Then against the Tigers, he was getting strikeouts. He just made a few mistakes that got hit hard. Now you get a good park to pitch in, but a very scary matchup against Tampa Bay. They have been amazing this year. They have 29 home runs. They have only allowed a total of 20 runs. They're 11-0, loaded lineup with right-handed bats. $7,400 Chris Sale, you can always make a case for getting to him just because of the strikeout stuff, and he's not getting a lot of ownership at 2%. It's really, really crazy seeing a $7,400 Chris Sale be 2% owned, but he does have a really tough matchup, and this is also a slate where you have Strider, Gossman, Kershaw at the top, then some other talented mid-range pitchers as well. So I get why Sale's not very popular. He is going under-owned, but it's also a really dangerous matchup.
Yeah, 2.4% projected ownership, 9.8% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. So some positive leverage there, but yeah, Tampa just crushing everybody right now. A little bit tough to want to go there. What about the bats? Any interest in the Red Sox? Are you going to be playing the Rays against Chris Sale? What's your level of interest here?
I'm interested in the Rays just because they are not getting a ton of ownership either, and this strikes me as a spot where people should probably be going to one side of it, right? Chris Sale, $7,400. And a very good strikeout pitcher that also just has been getting blasted in terms of home runs so far this year. But if you don't believe that Chris Sale has fallen off of a cliff, you should be playing an unowned Chris Sale at 7,400. If you do think Chris Sale's fallen off of a cliff, you should be playing a very good Tampa Bay lineup at 5% owned. So kind of surprising to me that neither side is getting ownership.
Yeah, interesting. So maybe would you call this a Scumdacker special? I see Gundacker in chat says RBI should be RSBI would be the correct plural there for RBI. Yeah, that's good call. But yeah, you could play both sides of this. A Scumdacker special. You could play either the Chris Sale or you could play Tampa on the other side of it. Both in play here. And Arnold Lane says Taj Bradley was just recalled from AAA for this start in place of Zach Eflin. I don't really know anything about Taj Bradley. He is 4,000.
Yeah, 16 starts at AA last year, 74 innings pitched. 12 starts at AAA, 59 innings pitched. Struck out 21.5% at AAA. The bat projects him for an 18.8% strikeout percentage in the majors, 4.69 FIP. He is 4K flat. I doubt this is a slate where you need that level of value.
Yeah. So probably not going to get there, but maybe if you have 4,000 left over in your lineup, you could go there.
Yeah, like it kind of strikes me when Grayson Rodriguez made his debut, he was 4K flat. And my initial assumption was, like, okay, this is the top pitcher in baseball. He's got really good strikeout or top pitching prospect rather in baseball. He's got really good strikeout stuff. He's 4K. Like he's just going to look great. And then you start building lineups and it's like, you can play him a little bit, but you kind of still need him to outscore these other pitchers in raw points because hitting pricing is so cheap that it's not opening a lot up for you. And this guy's a hell of a lot worse than Grayson Rodriguez.
Okay. Jake Swales, I think, disagrees. Jake says Bradley is almost a lock at 4K. So I'll tell you
for 4% ownership. So I don't think many people agree.
Yeah, I mean, but if you want to lock him, he does look pretty good in the top pitchers tool. 4.6% ownership, 7.4% chance to be in a top 2 pitcher, 37.7% chance to be in a top 2 value pitcher. So if he fits into your lineup, then sure. If you want to play some like more expensive stacks, then you can go there. But I definitely would not call him a lock. I think he's a contrarian play that you can consider. But I think Jake also said that he's going to this game. So he's a lock for Jake because Jake is probably a fan going to this game. Yeah. I would imagine that's part of the reason there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember when the Orioles didn't have real prospects and I had to get excited about fake guys like Taj Bradley.
Yeah. Sportsbook says don't use the word lock in MLB, sir. Yeah, that's not a word I usually use for bats at the very least. Maybe pitchers occasionally, but probably not somebody I'm using for bats. Noah Rosen asking, can we get some DK tiers for early MLB? So I'm assuming that you have not prepared for any tiers questions.
That is one thing I have not prepared for.
So I'm looking at it real quick, and let me see if I have any. I'm probably not going to have any. I think we're going to have to skip over it. I'm sorry. Neither of us is prepared at all for tiers for MLB. So it would take too long relative to all the other stuff that we got to get through. So apologies, can't do tiers just now. All right. So you think that it's maybe you could play the Rays? And did you say do or do not have interest in the Red Sox against Taj Bradley?
I do have interest in the Red Sox just because this is some guy making his major league debut that didn't have like lights out numbers at AAA. He's a Rays pitcher, so I'm sure he's fine. And I also assume he's going to be on a short leash and they're going to run ridiculous relievers out there after him. So it's still not a super appealing spot, but 8% chance of being the top stack, 4.5% projected ownership, reasonable 8% top value percentage as well. I'm not opposed to going there. The park does also suck though.
Jake Swell says that Taj Bradley clearly the top value on the slate.
Well, that is probably true.
Yeah, that is probably true. I think your homerism is showing though, Jake. You're saying that you're going to the game. Raise up, he says. I think that's just a little bit of homerism going on here. All right. Anything else you want to say about the Red Sox Rays game?
Just to kind of clarify there, like, and it goes back to what I was saying about when Grayson Rodriguez made his debut. Like, let's say this guy, what do we have him projected for? I know we had Rodriguez that day projected for like 13.5 DraftKings points. So like that's pretty, 3x plus is going to be a better value projection wise than pretty much any pitcher. It just turns into with baseball, it's a combination of the hitter pricing too. Like hitter pricing is typically just soft and has been all year long. So you get into a situation where it kind of just turns into you still need that 4K pitcher to score more points than like the other pitchers, and the value doesn't really matter as much.
Yep, yeah, it's more about raw points.
Arcatels has said, is it a bullpen game? Doesn't have to be. This guy is stretched out. It is the Rays. I think that anything can be a bullpen game.
Wex thanking us for going over some cash game strategy a little bit. Yeah, I'm glad you found it helpful talking a little cash games because it's very different from tournaments. And I think Adam had a lot of great thoughts there, even some things that I had not even considered, like maybe there are pros to stacking in some cases. All right. Anything else you want to say about the Red Sox Rays game? Did you respond?
Oh, I said no.
Oh, you said I did not hear you say no, so I was waiting for you. I thought you were thinking. Okay, we'll move on. We have Blue Jays versus Tigers coming up next. Kevin Gossman on the mound for the Blue Jays. Finally, a pitcher who reaches 5 figures in salary, 10,100 on Kevin Gossman against Detroit. Eduardo Rodriguez for Detroit. How much interest, if any, do you have in Gossman or Rodriguez?
Gossman a lot. Rodriguez not much. Good matchup for Gossman. Really good pitcher. Obviously goes without saying. 28% strikeout percentage last year, 2.79 FIP, 2.98 Sierra. Solid matchup against the Tigers. No real reason not to want to get to Gossman. Rodriguez is an okay pitcher, but just a loaded Toronto lineup and very, very difficult spot for him. Also, pitching in Toronto is not the most appealing spot to be facing a team that has a ton of power like the Blue Jays do.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say is Kevin Gossman your top pitcher on this slate?
Second to Strider.
Oh, we got Strider in there. Yeah, we haven't gotten to Strider yet.
Strider's like his own thing. It's like Strider's basically Jacob deGrom light. Like
right.
You have the Jacob deGrom tier whenever he pitches, and then you have the next tier.
And he's facing Cincinnati. So yeah, Strider, hard not to love. And he's 9,300. Is cheaper than Gossman as well. Yeah, hard not to love Strider on top of Gossman. But I guess those are your top two pitchers here. Gossman also, both also have the benefit of having good bats behind them, a little bit more likely to get the win here. Let's talk about those bats a little bit. What's your level of interest in either the Jays or Detroit as one-offs, as stacks? What's your interest?
Not particularly interested in Detroit at all. If you, for whatever reason, wanted to go to Detroit, you want to target a 30 whatever percent owned Gossman, but do Green, Baez, Carpenter probably where you're looking first, but not a spot that I'd really be wanting to get to. Toronto has the highest top stack percentage, third highest ownership behind Baltimore and Texas, so that is kind of interesting. It's just that they don't offer quite as much value as Baltimore or Texas, and because we do have high end pitching on this slate, I think you're seeing people want to pay up, and so Toronto is popular, but they're just not getting quite as much as the second and third most likely to succeed teams. So that's always interesting. Just getting the number one stack at lower ownership.
Yeah, I guess probably hard to play Toronto with Gossman and Strider, so maybe that's the hesitation there. But yeah, as you said, we have positive leverage on the top stack, which we don't often have. 15% chance to be in the top stack, 14%.
And also keep in mind that a lot of the time it's going to look more difficult to make lineups like that this time of day than once lineups come out, because you'll get lineups out and there's going to be like random, $2,500 hitters in spots that you weren't necessarily projecting in the morning.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe it'll be a little bit easier later on. Jake Swell says Bradley is the 18th rated prospect in MLB. Yeah, I mean, not saying he's not a good pitcher. He's just there's a lot of pitchers that decent pitchers on this slate that you could maybe pay up for instead of Bradley.
I assume that was a response to me talking about not having real prospects, but if they're not in the top 10, then who cares?
Yeah. I mean,
we can't all have Grayson Rodriguez and Gunnar Henderson.
Rubbing it in a little bit. Yeah, the Orioles have just like all of the top prospects in baseball, don't they?
Yeah, pretty much.
Feels unfair.
The Rays are also right there, though, to be honest, which is terrifying because they're already so good.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Anything else that you want to say about this game, Detroit and Toronto?
No.
All right. After that, we have Atlanta and Cincinnati. So here is the Spencer Strider game. Hunter Green on the other side as well. What's your level of interest in Strider and Green here?
Extremely, extremely high. Spencer Strider in particular, he's just, I mean, it's a broken price. He's $9,300. He's projected for 71% ownership on DraftKings, 43% chance of being a top two pitcher, clearly going over owned relative to chances of success, but also extremely, extremely likely to be a very good play here. 38.3% strikeout percentage since the start of last season. Just incredibly good pitcher facing a not real baseball team. So he looks great. I don't know how you get away from him outside of just, saying, well, he's 71% owned, I'll take my chances. On the other side, Hunter Green is very boom or bust. He has good strikeout stuff. He throws incredibly hard. He also does tend to give up some power, and facing a team like Atlanta, you do have some strikeouts in that lineup, but you also do have a lot of power that he has to, work his way through. 178 expected ISO to righties, 169 to lefties last year, 27% strikeout percentage to righties, 34.5% to lefties. He's pulling 20% ownership. I think at 6,900, that's perfectly fine given the strikeout upside that he offers.
Yeah, I thought I was going to really like Hunter Green because I thought he was probably going to be low owned against Atlanta, and he's getting 20%. So still looks fine, but just not like I was hoping he was going to be like 8% owned, and we were going to be able to play Hunter Green at no ownership.
Yeah, I think 20%. In the case of the the salary sort of offsets a lot of that risk,
Right.
and it just kind of like resets it to a point where you can just say, well, he's going to strike out a bunch of guys, and strikeouts, this is something that I think a lot of times when people think about floors, which, again, is kind of non-existent in baseball, but when you think about floors, a lot of times you think about limiting runs for pitchers, when really strikeouts are going to give you the best floor, because you can just get so unlucky with balls in play and runs allowed. And if you don't have good strikeout stuff, it's very difficult to make those fantasy points back. Whereas if you have good strikeout stuff, Green can give up a 3-run home run and then strike out 3 guys and you're back to even, basically.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I just realized, guys, I don't think I even asked you to like when we started this video. Please do like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Let's get some likes on this video. Please go ahead and like the video, and we'll start talking about the bats in this game. How much interest do you have in Cincinnati or the Braves as stacks, as one-offs? What's your interest here?
None in Cincy. I do like Atlanta. They are 4th in top stack percentage, but they're pulling basically half the ownership of Texas and Toronto and like 1/3 the ownership of Baltimore. It's because, they're not quite as good a value as Baltimore, Texas. They aren't in quite as good a spot as Toronto, but there is still a lot of upside here, and they are projected to do a little bit under-owned.
Yep. Yeah, somebody was asking about the early slate. Yeah, we like the Yankees as a contrarian stack. There are a lot of good stacks. You like Cubs, Mariners look good. St. Louis is the top stack, but they're going to have a ton of ownership. Colorado looking slightly under-owned, or approximately getting about the right ownership, but they look good in cores as well. I'd say those are some of the top stacks on the early slate. You can of course go back to the beginning of the video and and start from there, and you can put it on 2x speed if you want as well to get a fuller explanation of some of these stacks. Anything else you want to say about this Atlanta stack? I know you don't want to play Cincinnati. Anything else? Any one-offs you're planning on getting to a lot of here?
I mean, Matt Olson is kind of the immediate answer from the left side against Green. Acuna, I thought I saw something about him getting hurt yesterday. Maybe not, but he's in the projected lineup I'm looking at. But obviously, if he's in, he looks great as well.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Zach says, feel like it's already 1.5x. Yeah, we're going through it quickly. We do have 2 full slates to talk about today, 15 total games with the FanDuel one included. So we are going quickly through this, but I think we're hitting on all the important things we need to hit on anyway. All right, anything else you want to say about this Atlanta-Cincinnati game?
No.
Okay, we have 2 more games to get through. It's already past noon. Again, we did start a little bit late, so we'll go a little bit late as well. We have Nathan Eovaldi on the mound for Texas, Brad Keller for the Royals. What's your level of interest in these pitchers?
Not very high. Eovaldi is fine to get there. He's not on the same tier as Spider, Gossman, Kershaw, but we do have him 4th in top 2 pitcher percentage, 16% ownership, 17% top 2 percentage. So that's fine. As far as Keller goes, not a very good strikeout pitcher, not a great matchup against Texas. Good chance that Corey Seager's not in the lineup today. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not, but he did get hurt yesterday. Left the game early with either a groin, a hamstring, something in his leg. So I assume he's not playing today, which does water down Texas a bit, but not enough for me to want to get to Keller.
Adam, do you agree that the Timberwolves would have won if Anthony Edwards didn't get hurt in that game?
I didn't watch.
Okay, so I take that as agreement. I'm just going to take that as agreement. That's how he's going to take it. Yeah, he landed awkwardly on his shoulder. Everybody's talking about how bad Ant was in the game. Yeah, after he hurt his shoulder early in the game, he shot 1 for 9 from 3. He had a very bad game, but he was clearly banged up. That's not Ant. He's going to be back for the next game. Timberwolves going to win easily against hopefully OKC, but probably the Pelicans. I'm not worried. You did not watch it. What did you do? You didn't watch Timberwolves game? Didn't go to the Orioles game? You
watched the Orioles game and then went to bed.
You watched which game?
The Orioles.
Oh, okay. You just watched it on TV instead of going. Makes sense. Okay. What about the bats from this game? Texas, Kansas City. What's your level of interest in stacking these teams, playing one-offs? Tell me about it.
So Texas looks decent. Brad Keller does an okay job keeping the ball in the park, but doesn't strike out a lot of guys. I will be interested to see what this lineup looks like because, again, I'm not expecting Seager to be in it, but you'll still have Semien, Nathaniel Lowe, Adolis Garcia, Josh Young. Jonah Heim is always one of my favorite catching options in tournaments because he has a little bit of speed, a little bit of power, a lot of ways for him to get it done at catcher. So Texas does look pretty good as a stack. They are projected to go a bit over-owned. I mentioned them a couple of times, but they're 3rd in top stack percentage, 2nd in total ownership because they are very cheap.
Okay. And you say not playing the Royals here?
Not playing the Royals.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about this game? We've just got one more game to talk about.
Nope.
All right. Well, then we have the Dodgers at the Giants. Clayton Kershaw, Alex Cobb on the mound. What is your level of interest in these pitchers?
Kershaw looks great. Like, the guy's aging, but just still an extremely, extremely good pitcher. Since the start of last year, still nearly a 28% strikeout percentage, doesn't walk guys, sub-3 xFIP, doesn't give up power. There's not a lot to say about Clayton Kershaw. Like, he's just a great pitcher. He's in a good park as well. It's supposed to be like 55 degrees in San Francisco too. So, a lot of good hitting weather on the early slate, a lot of like neutral spots on the evening slate, but this one is clearly slanted in Kershaw's favor as well. Alex Cobb on the other side is a good pitcher. I don't typically make it a habit of taking guys against the Dodgers, but if you're playing 150 lineups and you fall on like a 3% owned Alex Cobb, that's fine. It's kind of similar to like the Chris Sale spot, different in that I'm more confident that Alex Cobb is still a good pitcher, but similar in that, like, I don't want Alex Cobb against the Dodgers, but I do kind of like the idea of Alex Cobb at 3% ownership against anybody.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So do you think that you'll actually get there in practice, or maybe you're not even playing?
I'm playing cash, and no, I will not get there in practice.
Okay. Yeah. In cash, definitely not. If you were 150 maxing, do you think you would 150 maxing a GPP? Do you think you'd get some Cobb?
maybe like 3, 4, 5%. I don't think I would get anything crazy.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I see some chat here. I haven't got Yankees, bro. I'm absolutely garbage at MLB DFS. So much harder to predict, in my opinion. I feel like with baseball, it's like it's even less about predicting than other sports. Like NBA, predicting like minutes and stuff, is something you have to predict. For baseball, it's like would you agree with that, or am I overthinking? Like, it's not really even about prediction. It's just a numbers game for me, where it's like we have projected ownership, we have projected top stack odds, and I don't even really try to predict baseball. I just kind of play the numbers game. Would you agree with that, or is that maybe
no,
I'm not
completely
explaining?
Like, I think you're playing the numbers game in any sport, but in baseball, True. There's just more variance. You're gonna be quote unquote wrong, for lack of a better word, a lot more often. But the thing is, like, that's the case for everybody, because that's just how the sport is. So it's people still overestimate their ability to quote unquote predict it. And that's sort of, I think, what makes MLB DFS fun, is if you're willing to just accept that you're going to be wrong a lot, and so is everybody else, you can put yourself in really advantageous positions. I do agree. Like, it can get frustrating because, you can do everything in your power. Like in basketball, if you're struggling with being right, there's a good chance that you're just not doing a good enough job projecting minutes, and you can get better at that. In baseball, you can't get better at predicting when a guy's going to line out at 108 miles an hour compared to hitting it in the gap at 108 miles an hour. Like, it's just random shit.
That was much more eloquently put than what I said, but yeah, that's a great explanation of, like, it's not really about predicting. That obviously there's a predictive element to every sport, but honestly, the best baseball season that I ever had, I didn't even look at like the names or anything. I literally just looked at the top stacks tool, the top pitchers tool, and made lineups according to those, and let Fantasy Cruncher crunch out some lineups for me. Occasionally, of course, building in some narratives and stuff, but just playing the numbers game with the top stacks tool, the top pitchers tool, to me,
I've said to people before that I actually think I'd probably be better at MLB DFS, or at least in the past would have had more success if baseball wasn't the sport that I know the most about. Like MMA, I have success because it's similar, where there's just a ton of random stuff that happens, but I don't know shit about MMA, so I just plug stuff into a spreadsheet, make lineups, and have no opinions about anything. I'm a lot more, my process is a lot more automated now in MLB too, but like back in the day, I was very much, be like, oh, I don't actually want to play this pitcher or play this offense or whatever, because I actually knew like what I was doing.
Right. Yeah, it's just it's easier to play the numbers game. Also, just easier to build lineups that way without thinking too hard about some of the trying to predict things when it's just an impossible game to predict here. Even as we've seen Coors Field games where it's just like, man, this 2 bad pitchers in Coors, at least 1 good offense, and then just it ends up being like a 1-0 game. It's just it's really a tough game to predict. But you just gotta understand that about the game. You're gonna lose even if you do have good process in choosing under-owned teams, that kind of thing. Anyway, back to the final game on the slate. How much interest, if any, do you have in the bats? Obviously, 2 tough matchups with Clayton Kershaw and Alex Cobb on the mound. Do you think you're going to be playing some? Do you agree with? I think Steve said in his tweet the other day, you got to always play at least one Dodger stack.
I don't think
you agree with that.
I mean, I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
Yeah.
And I think going right back to the Dodgers today makes sense the same way it made sense against Alex Wood, the same way it made sense against whoever they faced the start before that.
Logan Webb, maybe?
Yeah, it was Webb. Cobb's a good pitcher. The Dodgers are a hell of an offense too. And this is another spot kind of similar to like we were saying with Tampa Bay against Sale, where I think you're just, I mean, here it's, I know what the reason is, but like it's the same kind of thing. Like the offense doesn't project that good because Alex Cobb is good and Chris Sale at one point was good, may or may not still be good. And so it just drives down the total ownership going into that offense. But you're talking about median projections in a sport with a very, very wide range of outcomes and a lot of variance. There's going to be, if you just play out an Alex Cobb versus Dodgers matchup, sure, there's going to be some games where it ends up being like 3-2. Alex Cobb goes 6 innings, he has a 3 runs, strikes out 4, and is completely unusable, and sucks from a fantasy standpoint, but the Dodgers also suck. But there's going to be a high percentage of those games that either Alex Cobb dominates the Dodgers or the Dodgers light up Alex Cobb. And so that is one thing in baseball I try and keep in mind, and this goes back to Steve's tweet about the Dodgers, what it looks like when a team actually has success. Like there's some offenses where if they score 8 runs, like the A's, for example, if the A's go out there and score 8 to 10 runs, there's a very good chance that they still only hit like 1 or 2 home runs and they just slapped a bunch of singles and doubles around, and they still didn't have a great DFS game in terms of raw points. If the Dodgers go score 10 runs, there's a good chance they just hit like 4 home runs and that, you have a bunch of players you really want.
Yeah, absolutely. The Dodgers can destroy the slate, whereas it's a lot less likely with a team like the A's. All right. So the evening slate, do we want to do top pitchers from this evening slate? I guess we already kind of did. Spencer Strider, clearly the SP1 here. Who's your SP2?
Gausman. Kershaw is, it's between Gausman and Kershaw. I would lean Gausman.
Okay. And then if you're playing a single entry, what do you think is the top stack you go to in the evening slate?
I had one. I already forgot what I said it was. I like Atlanta against Green just because they're getting like half the ownership of every team ahead of them.
Yep. Makes sense. And then do you have a dong pick?
I will in a second. I feel like Matt Olson's too easy.
Matt Olson, he averages like a home run and a half a game.
Yeah. Let's go with. There's a lot of good pitchers today. I'll go Nathaniel Lowe.
What do you think of George Springer? Maybe I'll go with George. I feel like that's not cheating to go with George Springer, right?
Yeah, it's not as egregious as Matt Olson.
Yeah. How many home? He hit 25 home runs last year.
Okay. Yeah.
And 103. So yeah, it doesn't feel that egregious. I'll go with George Springer as my dong pick. I feel like we had a few other. We got to close up the show. I do have another show coming up in 15 minutes, so we're gonna close up this show. Wanted to see if we have any other. I'm sure I missed some questions, but thank you guys very much for showing up to the show, chatting with us. Alex, Adam, do you have any final thoughts on this slate?
Nope.
All right. Good show. Good closing there. Thanks again, guys, for watching the video. Please do, if you have not yet liked the video, do so. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Good luck today. We've got the slate. I guess the main slate the early slate just started. So good luck today. Good luck tonight. Let's win some money, guys. Talk to you later.